Okay, this is week 3, chapter 4. Learning objective 2 starts on page 126. Summarize the 3 by 3 writing process and explain how it guides a writer. This is really a very helpful process and it's really kind of neat. So let's get into it. First, it starts off with a definition of a digital message. Okay. Um, I'm trying to see if you'll get it now. Still thinking about it. All right. A digital message may be defined as one that is generated, stored, processed, and transmitted electronically by computers using strings of positive and non-positive binary code. Binary means two, so the code is all O's and ones. If you ever want to look at it, it's kind of a weird thing to do, code, but you can just look at, do a Google and find it. That definition encompasses many messages, including email, Facebook posts, tweets, and other messages. So we're going to focus primarily on messages exchanged on the job, defining your business writing goals. One thing you should immediately recognize about business writing is that it differs from other writing you've done. And that's what I was saying earlier. You have to write differently. You cannot be writing like you um, are writing to your best friend that you've grown up with or that you've done a lot of neat things with. Business writing is a notch up. So, in the workplace, you will want your writing to be purposeful. You'll be writing to solve problems and convey information. You have a definite strategy to fulfill in each message. Economical, you try to present ideas clearly but concisely. Length is not rewarded. Audience oriented, you will concentrate on looking at a problem from the perspective of the audience instead of seeing it from your own. Okay. Purposeful, why are you writing it? What are you trying to discuss? What are you trying to show? Economical, it's not money. Yeah, a lot of times people sometimes say that academic writing, like if you're a professor or if you're in English or history, um, that writing has a lot of different types of information and has a different purpose. And a lot of times it's better to have a longer um, paper, maybe 7 or 8 pages, to try and get a lot of information in there versus writing business. When you're writing in a business message, short, sweet, to the point, but make sure you cover everything. Okay, let's not get too wordy. So that's where the concisely thing is, and length is not. A lot of times in business, if you mean if you mean 3 pages, you mean 3 pages, not 3.5, not 4, 3. Audience oriented, you are concentrating on looking at a problem from the perspective of somebody else. You're writing for the other person, which is why a minute ago we were talking about the purpose for writing it. What questions are you considering? What do you expect them to receive? And there's a nice quote from David Silverman that you may want to look at. So the ability to prepare purposeful, concise, audience-centered messages does not come naturally, and it doesn't. We're kind of a talkative crew. So it has to be a systematic process, and here's the process. Introducing the 3 by 3 writing process. There are 3 phases: pre-writing, drafting, and revising. You will see this all through the quarter up until the last day you're in class, okay? You will be hearing pre-writing, drafting, and revising. So here's a diagram. I think I told you last week, and I'm going to tell you again. I'll probably tell you again next week because I'll forget that I told you this week. Whenever you see these charts in your book, you need to read them. They really get kind of concise and help you understand what you're reading in the words. So if you're a very visual person, these are really, really helpful. If you're more of a literal person who can read, this may just help you understand what you're reading a little bit better. Okay, so the first step is pre-writing. In your pre-writing, you're going to analyze what is your purpose, what do you want the receiver to do or to believe, and what channel are you using? Remember how you're going to get it there. Then you have to anticipate the audience. What kind of audience are they? All business people? Or is it men and women? Do all of them have PhDs and are they businessmen, or are they students like you? Which means you have they have a different frame of reference. than people that have PhDs or in the business world. What does the receiver already know? Yes, it's a judgment call on your part. Where the receiver's response be neutral, positive, or negative, and depending on what your answer is how you're going to organize your presentation. Then you're going to sit down and do your draft. You're going to gather all the data, provide the facts. You're going to search whatever company files you need to, previous correspondence, if there is any, and the internet. What do you need to know to write this message, and how much does the audience already know? Organize. You're going to organize direct messages with the big idea first. Okay. I forgot to scroll up enough. I'm sorry. Followed by an explanation in the body and an action request in the closing. For persuasive or negative messages, see this one's direct. For persuasive or negative messages, use an indirect problem-solving strategy. And then on the draft, prepare a first draft, usually quickly. Focus on short, clear sentences using the active voice. Build paragraph coherence or understanding by repeating key ideas, using pronouns, and incorporating appropriate transitional expressions. Be careful using pronouns because them and this and those kind of get confusing sometimes. And then I'll let you just go ahead and read adapt on your own. Revising. So you've pre-wrote it. You've taken the draft and made kind of a draft of things. Now you're going to revise it. Edit your message to be sure it is clear, concise, and conversational and readable. Revise to eliminate wordy fillers, long lead-ins, redundancies, and trite business phrases. Develop parallelism. Consider using headings and numbered and bulleted lists. I'm going to preach bulleted lists at you like you wouldn't believe. Make sure they make sense to be a bulleted list. Proofread. Take the time to read every message carefully. Look for errors in grammar and spelling, punctuation, names, and numbers. Be sure the format is consistent. In other words, a real quick example, if the first part of the message is Times New Roman 12, and then partway down the message, for some reason, the computer jumped, and now you're using Verdania 11. No. Does the tone sound pleasant and friendly rather than curt, like sharp at being sassy? Have you thought enough about the audience to be sure this message is appealing, and did you encourage feedback? So pre-writing. I'm not going to go through a lot of this because it's kind of laid out really well up here. So I'm just going to hop, skip, and jump through this. The first phase involves analyzing your audience and your purpose. It would be the audience for your message would be maybe other franchise owners, some highly educated and others not. Your purpose in writing is to convince them that a change in policy would improve customer service. Rewriting also involves anticipating how your audience is going to react. And then in adapting your message to the audience, you try to think of the right words and the right tone that will win approval. Drafting, the second phase, involves researching, organizing, and then drafting the message. In researching information for this message, you would probably investigate other kinds of businesses that use single lines for customers. You might check competitors Wendy's and Burger King and what they're doing. You might do some calling to see whether other franchise owners are concerned. In other words, you have to kind of do some footwork. Once you've done the information, you're going to focus on organizing and drafting the letter. Then revising, which is the third phase, editing, proofreading, and evaluating your message. You're going to edit the message after the first draft for clarity, conciseness, and readability. It's going to be rearranged to make it better. Next, you're going to spend time proofreading carefully. And the final phase is evaluating. Now, pacing the writing process. This is a really important paragraph right there. Okay. On average, you should expect to spend 25% of your time pre-writing, 25% of your time drafting, and 50% revising. Just rough guides. You will be going over and here are these percents from now till through the end of the quarter. There are rough guides yet you can see the good writers spend most of their time on the final phase of writing and proofreading because you're putting it all together. It may appear that you perform one step and progress to another, always following the same order. Many find that new ideas occur after they've begun to write, causing them to back up, alter the organization, and rethink their plan, which is fine, but you need to leave yourself sufficient time to do that. Beginning business writers often follow the writing process closely. Experienced though, they may become like other good writers and presenters who alter, compress, and rearrange their steps as needed. Okay, now that is it for learning objective 2, but this is going to include learning objective 3 also. So we're going to come, here's the graphic, what we just said, pre-writing, drafting, and revising. So you can look at this diagram. Analyze the purpose of a message, anticipate its audience, and select the best channel. Now, let's just look at this. I think this would be probably more helpful in having you understand. One would imagine that executives at Amazon use only the latest digital communication technologies to share information during meetings. However, instead of reading from interactive whiteboards and Kindles, CEO Jeff Bezos and his leadership team spend the first 30 minutes of strategy meetings reading paper memos and jotting comments in the margins. According to Bezos' memos are ideal because they have a narrative structure that allows for logical development of ideas. What do business writers need to think about when preparing written materials for meetings? Determining your purpose. As you begin to compose a workplace message, ask yourself 2 important questions. Okay. Why am I sending this message? And what do I hope to achieve? Your responses will determine how you organize and present your message. Your message may have a primary and secondary purposes. For college work, your primary purpose may be merely to complete the assignment. It is what it is. Secondary purposes might to make yourself look good and earn an excellent grade. The primary purpose for sending business messages are typically to inform and persuade. Secondary purpose is to promote goodwill. Anticipating and profiling the audience. A good writer anticipates the audience for a message. What is the reader or listener like? How will that person react to the message? Although you can't always know exactly what they're going to be like or how they will perceive it, you can maybe tell. A copywriter at Land's End, shopping an internet retailer, pictures his sister-in-law whenever he writes product descriptions for the catalog. Okay, that's his one way of doing it. Profiling your audience is a pivotal step in the writing process. How much time? Analytical report that you compose for management or an oral presentation before a big group would, of course, demand considerable time profiling the audience. So let's look at this. Asking the right questions to profile your audience. Primary audience, who's my primary reader? What are my personal and professional relationships? What position does this person hold? How much does this person know about the subject as far as you can understand? What do I know about this person's education beliefs? Should I expect a neutral, positive, or negative response to my message? Your secondary audience is who might see or hear this message in addition to primary audience. How do these people differ from these people? Do I need to include more background information so that when the secondary reads it, they will understand it just as much as the primary? How must I reshape my message to make it understandable and acceptable to others to whom it might be forwarded to? So determining your purpose, these are questions you ask yourself. Why am I sending this message and what do I want to achieve? Your message will have primary and secondary purposes. Primary would be merely to complete the assignment. We've used this before, talked about a couple pages back. Secondary purposes would be to make yourself look good and earn an excellent grade. Business messages are typically going to be inform and persuade. Secondary purpose is promote goodwill. Okay. Many business messages do nothing more than inform. They explain procedures, announce meetings, answer questions, transmit findings. Okay. Some business messages are meant to persuade. We'll talk about that in the next chapter. Sell products, convince managers, motivate employees, win over customers. Anticipating and profiling the audience. A good writer anticipates the audience for a message. I just lost my train of thought. Okay, what is the reader like or listener like? How is that person going to react? It's a pivotal step in the writing process. I'm going to go down here and look at this in a minute. How much time you devote to answering these questions depends on your message and its context. If you're doing a report for management or oral presentation for a big group, would of course demand considerable time profiling the audience. An email message to a coworker or a message to a familiar supplier might require only a few moments of planning. So it's kind of like depending on who's going to be important and who's going to be reading the message. Okay, and that is it of objectives 2 and 3. Okay.